The topic for today is own your story. Everybody has a story, every single one of you. So today I'm going to tell you mine. So just a little bit about me if you haven't met me before. I've been a journalist for 28 years. Most of that was with the ABC, including 7 years here with ABC Far North. And also held senior communications roles in various organisations in Australia and also in the UK. Right now I'm the director and trainer at Emotion Video Training and Production with the beautiful Susie Cray, and we've been working together for 3 years. So this is my life and my purpose now, and I'm extremely happy to be doing what I do. I've also written my first book, which is a biography of a man you may know called Som Tumang, who lives here in Cairns. He is the founder of Friends of Himalayan Children and a former child slave. So I'll tell you a bit more about that later. And something people may not know about me is that I'm actually a salsa dance teacher as well. So I've been doing that. That was the first business I ran. Began fairly early for me, my journalism career. My grandfather, Stanley Harrison, was a businessman. He actually brought the Villable company from England to Australia. So he was a very hard worker. That's not him on the catalogue there, but you know, he would have been wearing something similar. And he was and is to this day my inspiration. He was my last surviving grandparent. He died when I was 10. But we had a real connection, and we still do, and he was the one that inspired me to be a writer and to be a journalist. When I was 9, he told me that I looked like Jana Wendt, and that kind of started everything off. I looked up to her and saw what she was doing as a journalist with a current affair at the time, and I thought, that's what I'm going to do. So basically, put a little bit of pressure on myself from 9 years old to achieve that goal, and everything else after that was geared towards being a journalist. So as soon as I left school, I did really well at school in Western Sydney. I got into university, into a very competitive course, and you had to be in the top 4% in the state, which was New South Wales, to get in. Got in, and then I got a cadetship on my local newspaper, and I'm like, I'm going to go and get paid $200 a week for slave labour and be a journalist, because that's what I want to do. The learning can come later. So I worked on the Blacktown Guardian, which was an independent newspaper, and really was able to indulge my passion for social justice. And the reason I wanted to become a journalist was I enjoy telling people stories. It was never about, you know, busting up politicians or crime or ambulance chasing or any of that. I love people, and I love talking about people, and I love meeting people and finding out what makes them tick. So community newspaper was a great place to do that. And we actually won the Best Community Newspaper Award in the time that I was there, which was a very proud moment. And I was all of 18, 19 years old when I was there. Went off to the Education Minister's office to see how the other side worked fairly early on in my career, to get a taste of politics. But ultimately, my goal was the ABC. I wanted to get back to do everything I could to get back into my journalism career. And actually the Education Minister, after I was entering my 3rd year, said, you know, Kirsty, you really should get back and do that degree. So I ended up enrolling in a master's degree at Wollongong University and doing 300 hours of work experience for the ABC, working with Kerry O'Brien at 7:30 and ABC Illawarra to try and get my straps up, and also at Channel 9 News on the weekends, and also on a community radio station, North FM, with somebody you may know well, Paul Murray, who's now obviously got his own show on Sky. So he was a very young and ambitious 19-year-old when we worked together on the radio station. So I was doing all of that in my degree, and eventually I got my first ABC job in the middle of Australia. So I was prepared to do anything. So I didn't know a single soul in Alice Springs, but I was very happy to go on an adventure as a 23-year-old and headed out to there, and it turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life, not just from a career point of view, but also because I met my wonderful husband, Sean, there. So thanks for being here today, Sean. We're celebrating 19 years of marriage next month. So Alice Springs was a great training ground. You literally just arrive on the ground and you've got to do all bits of the job, got to learn everything. So some of my highlights from the time there were obviously the visit of the Queen Elizabeth II in 2000, which carries a bit more meaning now. The Camel Cup, which I actually rode in for a story one year. The disappearance of Peter Falconio and Joanne Lees, I was there. I'd literally just driven from Darwin to Alice Springs by myself. It gives me goosebumps to think about this, about a week before that happened. So I drove through Barrow Creek in a car by myself, thinking about stopping overnight in Tennant Creek about a week before these poor people came to grief on the Stuart Highway. So I'm really glad I kept going that day. Amazing wealth of stories out there. Got a lot of stories on AM, PM and the World Today. So I ended up moving to Sydney to work for them for a while. And my career was going really well. But I thought I had that little itch, so I went and moved overseas for a while. And boy, wasn't that a big crash to earth. So I went from being, quite respected in my career with the ABC to being persona non grata on the other side of the world. And really struggled to get a job as a journalist. So I ended up working in PR for the Nursing and Midwifery Council, and also as a maitre d' for an Indian restaurant in Chelsea. So I got to hang out with a few celebrities like Rowan Atkinson and Bryan Adams. So that was kind of cool, and I've made friends for life and started my connection with Nepal over there as well. A lot of the staff were Indian and Nepalese, so that was a good chapter, but very humbling because I went from having reasonable amount of money and respect in my career to basically being nothing and nobody with no money and really just having to survive. But it was a great learning experience. But I came back for this man and moved back to Alice Springs. So I did another 7 years out there. That's when I started my first business. So I arrived back in Alice Springs and everyone had heard the word that I was doing lots of salsa dancing in London, and they're like, can you please teach us how to do it? And I'm like, I guess so. So I started my first business, which was strictly salsa in Alice Springs. You can only cover so many camel cups and murders, and there's this kind of perennial thing of stories in Alice Springs, and there was no real career progression, and I thought I really do want to move to somewhere where I can mentor people, because I really liked that part of my job. So the job came up here as a lead news reporter in 2010, and I came over to Cairns at that point. That was going well for the first few years, but then the kind of accumulation of reporting on trauma after trauma, natural disaster, was starting to take its toll. I moved into the Chief of Staff role, which I thought might get me away from some of that, but it had its own problems, and essentially I didn't sleep for 5 months. I started not to recognise myself. I started to disengage. I've always been a really social person. I just lost all my joy. If you've seen my Instagram, you'll know that I love to cook. That all sort of stopped. I didn't want to go out anymore, and I basically became depressed. And it was something really, really difficult because I just didn't recognise myself. I was having panic attacks. Ultimately, I was diagnosed with depression, and the doctor said you need to have some time off, basically. So I just downed tools and I left, and I just needed to get better. In that time, I went to Nepal. So I had met Som Tamang in 2015 after the Nepal earthquakes, interviewed him. He lost his brother in the earthquakes, and everything that his charity Friends of Himalayan Children had worked for until that point. The school was gone, the hostel was gone. Thankfully, none of the children died, but it was a huge loss for the community, and did stories on him going back a few times after the earthquakes, but ultimately became involved in the work that they did. They asked me to MC their International Women's Day event, and we started sponsoring our first of 3 girls over in Batassi. And so I thought, this was about 18 months after the earthquake, and I thought, what can I do to find my purpose again? I can go and volunteer over there. So I ended up going and volunteering in Batassi for 5 weeks, and I came home feeling a little bit more like myself again. I had a purpose. I was teaching journalism to the students over there, many of whom hadn't even seen a newspaper before. but it just kind of gave me a sense that all was not lost, that I could actually rebuild from somewhere. So I came back with two ideas. One was I really wanted to write Som's story, and the second one was I wanted to be a trainer. And I didn't quite know how I was going to make that happen. I ended up going back to the ABC, to my old job, which really wasn't good for me, but I lit a bit of a spark. So I ended up being YEP, the first ever entrepreneur to engage with YEP, with Tara Diversity, and I said, look, I've got this business idea, I want to be a media trainer. I've always loved mentoring people, so I ended up doing that. They gave me my first gig as a media trainer. So in 2017 I started doing workshops, and realised the first time I was in front of people doing media training that this is what I was supposed to be doing and where I was supposed to be. As I mentioned, I was still at the ABC. I realised it wasn't good for me, and so when I found out Queensland Health were looking for somebody to tell good news stories, I was like, yes please. So I got my ticket out towards the end of 2017. Actually after that I was diagnosed with PTSD. So I'd not only had depression, I'd had undiagnosed PTSD. So finally I was able to get treatment, and I got 18 months of EMDR treatment, which is phenomenal, and I'm good now. So I can watch the news again. Not that I limit my consumption, but I can watch explosions and fire without things happening, and that was all connected to being the first camera woman on scene at the Ravenshoe Cafe explosion, and of course the horrible deaths of those children in 2014. So I found a way forward, which was fantastic. So I got myself off antidepressants, got a job where I felt valued and like I could be myself and use my skills again, and it was good. But I really still wanted to do my own business and also write this book, which finally happened. So I went back to Nepal in 2018 to gather the interviews for this book, because I thought I just want to make this happen. So unfortunately, the way I needed to do that was to go to Everest Base Camp, because that's where Som was going. So I thought, well, if I have to do that, then okay, it's a little bit of extra effort, but I'll do it. So I went to Nepal in 2018. We ended up raising money for a library in the village, the first ever library. And on this day, 4 years ago, that's where I was, arriving at Everest Base Camp. Once again, bit of a personal achievement. It's very cliched, but definitely more about the journey than the destination. Went with a beautiful bunch of women from Cairns and got all the interviews for the book. So the book finally got written, and I launched it in March this year at International Women's Day. Now it hasn't actually been published yet. I'm still on that journey of trying to find a publisher, but I'm really proud to have written Som's story. It is a cracker. It'll be a movie one day, and I'm just looking for the right person to say, yeah, that's it. I've had wonderful feedback from publishers. No one ready to take the commercial risk yet, but they're out there, I know. So you probably want to just hear about business, because this is a business forum, and how did I actually make the transition from journalist to business. So Susie Cray, who you've had the pleasure of meeting today, most of you, we met at the ABC, and I knew that she had similar values. I knew that she loved training people, and I knew that she was an incredibly talented editor, camerawoman, and editing trainer. She's trained people all over the world. And you know, she's had a similar journey to myself. She had some battles a few years before me, and she was really supportive of me through my darkest times. So as our friendship grew, so did the idea that we should join forces. I'd say this as we were the front end and the back end of the horse, and we still argue about who's who. But essentially, you know, I'm the journalist camera woman, and she's the camera woman editor, and we both love training people. So we thought, why not start doing workshops and training people how to do this? Because yes, we can do video production, but how good would it be to empower people like yourselves to learn how to use the tool they've already got in their pocket, their phone, to make videos? So we thought we'd just try it. And we had our first workshop at the Space in the end of 2019, and we've taught hundreds of people since, all over Australia. And I couldn't be more excited to be working with Suze and actually living and loving the life that I have now. So thank you so much for being on that journey with me, Susie. So we learned just to say yes to everything, including when people said, oh, we love that you taught us video and we appreciate how hard it is now, and can you just do it for us? So we started doing video production as well. So that's another arm of our business. We made the ultimate commitment this year. So we've kind of kept a foot in the workforce for a little while, and I had the book. But beginning of this year, we went, right, we're all in. My business is coming in, Susie's business is coming in, and we're just going for it with Emotion Video Training and Production. So we officially launched as a company on the 1st of July this year, and there's no looking back. All right, on to the video tips, because I know you're all hungry for a bit of content. So if you need convincing about what the value of video is, 96% of people have watched an explainer video to learn more about a product or service. We don't just accept salespeople at their word anymore. We want to go and do our own research. So videos can play a really important role in showing people what's involved in something, or, you know, it's kind of like a try before you buy experience, or testimonials, so powerful. 87% of marketing professionals say videos help them increase traffic on their website and social media. And this is the big one. Now we're watching an average of 19 hours of video per week. I think COVID had a lot to do with that, but it's almost doubled since 2018. So people are watching more videos than they ever did. So if you're not doing video, you need to be doing video. I mentioned at the beginning that we all have a story. People want to see you. You're the face of your business. So they want to know, they want to get under the hood. They want to see behind the scenes to know what makes you tick, what makes you different to your competitor, and what gets you up in the morning. That's why they want to engage with you and not your competitor. So it is important to be visible as part of your business. The other thing we find with people considering doing video is they forget a fundamental rule. Who is it actually for? What do you want to get out of it? Video production can be quite expensive if you're engaging professionals to do it. So you want to be very clear about who the video is going to be for. So think about these things before you're going to make a video. Whether you're making it yourself on your smartphone or you're engaging professionals to do it, who is your target audience? And a lot of people say, oh, everybody, my service or my product appeals to everybody. The more specific you can be, if you're doing a video, the more likely you are to reach that audience. Think about what you're trying to achieve. What do you want people to do after watching this video? If you're doing it just to feel good about yourself, that's okay, but don't expect the customers to coming through the door. The more specific you can be about the messages you're using to get to those people and the outcome that you're hoping to achieve, the better. So really going through this process of planning before you start doing any videos is really important. And a few last tips. If you are going to be on camera and set things up yourself, and a lot of us have gotten used to doing this on Zoom and going to lots of presentations during COVID, it's important to apply the rule of thirds, which I've got over my face here. Just a few tips. People, whenever there's a camera, they automatically get as close to the thing in the background as they can, like it could be a painting or a banner. Just take a step away, because we're trying to turn a two-dimensional scenario into a three-dimensional scenario and trick the mind. So the further you can be away from the background, the better. And just be yourself. You don't have to put on any particular persona. People want to engage with you. You're successful in business because of who you are. So let that show. You don't have to put on any particular voice or wear makeup if you don't normally wear makeup. Just be you and be authentic. And people will see the difference and they'll respond to that. And the last thing is smile. Maybe I haven't smiled enough during this presentation, but one really great piece of feedback that I got when I was at the ABC, and she used to camera on about it, was the state editor that I had for the ABC in the Northern Territory, Genevieve Hussey, who's now in Queensland. I do these pieces to camera as part of my TV news stories, and I always hated the idea because I'm like, nobody wants to see me. I'm not the story, but they made us do them. And every time she's like, you need to smile more, you know, you need to have that. And what she meant was, we communicate with our eyes, right? Whenever you're looking at somebody, you're generally looking at them in the eye. That's where we communicate, the window to the soul. So if you can kind of think about something nice that's going to make you feel good and make you smile, people will be able to respond to that and see that when you're presenting yourself on camera. So I'm not talking about kind of whacking on a fake smile and just talking about things and not being yourself. Definitely want you to be yourself. But if you think about something nice and let that smile come into your eyes, you'll end up with a much nicer, warmer, communicative video to connect with people. And it's all about connection. So that's my story. Thank you.